Hari Om, Sukumar, you can begin the proceedings.
Sahana bhavatu Sahanau bhunatu Sahaviryam karavavakai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakodi Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Samasta Janakalyani Niradam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Om Sri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. Om Pradasmarami Hridi Samspuradatmatattvam Sachit Sugam Paramaham Sagadinturiyam Yesopna Jagara Sushuptama Vaidi Nityam Tadbrahma Nishkalamaham Najaputa Sankaha Pradarbhajami Manasa Vacha Samagamyam Vacho Vibhandi Nikilaya Tanugrahena Yennedi Nedi Vajanir Nikamavavucho Sandeva Deva Majamachudamahurakram Pradharnamami Tamasa Paramarkavarnam Purnam Sanadana Padam Purushotamakyam Yasminnidam Jagadasheshamaseshamuto Rajvam Bhujankamaiva Pratibhasidam Bhai. Pranasedam Vashe Sarvam Prativeya Pratishtitam Mateva Putran Rakshasva Srijna Prajnancha Viteyana Iti. പാതുക സ്തോത്രം. അനന്ത സംസാര സമുദ്രതാര നൗകായിതാഭ്യാം ഗുരുഭക്തിദാഭ്യാം വൈരാഗ്യ സാമ്രാജ്യത ഭൂജനാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം കവിത്വവാരാശിനിശാകരാഭ്യാം ദൗർഭാഗ്യദാവാം ഉദമാലികാഭ്യാം ദൂരീകൃതാനം പ്രവിപത്തതിഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം നധായയോ ശ്രീപതിതാം സമീയോ കദാചിദപ്യാചുദരിദ്രവൈര്യാഃ മൂഗാശ്ച വാചസ്പതിതാം ഹിതാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം നാലീകനീകാശപദാഹൃദാഭ്യാം നാനാവിമോഹാദിനിവാരികാഭ്യാം നമജ്ജനാഭീഷ്ടതതിപ്രദാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം നൃപാലിമൗലി വൃചരത്നകാന്തി സരിദ്ധിരാജാചഷകന്യകാഭ്യാം നൃപത്വദാഭ്യാം നതലോകപന്തി നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം പാപാന്തകാരാർക്കപരംപരാഭ്യാം താപത്രയാഹീന്ദ്രഗഗേശ്വരാഭ്യാം ജാഢ്യാബ്ധി സംശോഷണപാഠവാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം ശമാധിഷട്കപ്രദവൈഭവാഭ്യാം സമാധിദാനപ്രദധീക്ഷിതാഭ്യാം രമാധവാം സ്ഥിരഭക്തിദാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം സ്വാർച്ചാപരാണാം അഖിലേഷ്ടദാഭ്യാം സ്വാഹാ സഹായാക്ഷദുരന്ധരാഭ്യാം സ്വാം താച്ച ഭാവപ്രദപൂജനാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം കാമാദിസർപ്പവൃചകാരുഢാഭ്യാം വിവേകവൈരാഗ്യനിധിപ്രദാഭ്യാം ബോധപ്രദാഭ്യാം ധൃതമോക്ഷദാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം നമോ നമ ശ്രീ ഗുരുപാദുകാഭ്യാം മൂകം കരോതി വാചാലം പങ്കും ലംഘയതേ കൃതിം യത്കൃപാതമഹം വന്ദേ പരമാനന്ദമാധവം യം ബ്രഹ്മാ വരുണേന്ദ്രരുദ്രമരുതഃ തുന്വന്തി ദിവ്യൈസ്തവേ വേദേ സാംഗപദക്രമോപനിഷദ് ഗായന്തി യം സാമഗാം ധ്യാനാവസ്ഥിതദ്ഗതേന മനസാ പശ്യന്തി യം യോഗിനോ യസ്യാന്തം ന വിദുഃസുരാസുരഗണ ദേവായ തസ്മൈ നമഃ. സർവധർമാൻ പരിത്യജ്യ മാമേകം ശരണം വ്രജ അഹം ത്വാ സർവപാപിഭ്യോ മോക്ഷയിഷ്യാമി മാ ശുചഃ. Slokas 38 to last 47. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Shri Krishna Paramatmane Namaha. Adha Shashtodhyayah Dhyana Yogaha. Arjuna Uvacha Kachinno Bhaya Vibhrashtaha Chinnabhramiva Nashyati Apratishto Mahabahu Vimudho Brahmana Pati Etam me samchayam Krishna Chetumarhasya Sheshataha Todanya samchayasyasya Chetana Hyupapadyate Shri Bhagavanuvacha Parthanaiveha Vinashastasya Vindyate Nahi Kalyana Kachid Durgadim Tata Gachati Prapya Punyakritam Lokan Ushitva Shashwati Samaha Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Brishto Bhijayate Athava Yoginameva Tule Bhavati Dhimata Edadhi Durlabhataram Loke Janmayati Krisham Tatratam Buddhi Samyogam Labhate Paurvadehikam Yetate Chadato Bhuyaha Samsiddho Kurunantana Purvabhyasena Tenaiva Kriyate Havashopi Saha Jijñāsurapi yogasya Shabdha Brahmati Vartate Prayatnadyudamanastu Yogi Samshuddha Kilbhishaha Anega Janma Samsiddhaha Tato Yati Param Gatim Tavasibhyodiko Yogi Jnanibhyopi Madhutikaha Karmibhyatyadigo yogi Tasmad yogi bhavarjuna Yogi nama visarvesham Madgadenantaratmana Sraddhavan bhajate yoma Sameyuttadamo mataha Om Tatsat Idi Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Dhyana Yogo Nama Shashtodhyayah.
Hari Om. In continuation of the discussion of the summary on chapter 6, I would request Balaji sir to start the discourse. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Sadgurunath Maharaj ki Jai. Nice to see all of you. Now, the 6th chapter, Dhyana Yoga, is essentially describing the entire technique of meditation. And we all know by now that this is the only known method by which we can realize the higher potential in us and also realize the Paramatma residing in our hearts. This has also been very briefly mentioned in the Vishnu Sahasranamam, Lakshmi Kantam Kamalanayanam Yogi Hridyana Gamyam. So the whole chapter is dealing only with this one verse, Yogi Hridyana Gamyam. How do we realize the higher in us? There is only by Dhyana Gamyam. You can reach him only through this method of Dhyana, for which you have to first be a yogi. So this is the one sentence. If we remember from here, we can actually expound the entire 6th chapter. Now, Gurudev says, what is meditation? Meditation is the opposite of agitation. Meditation is opposite of agitation, meaning agitation is something which we know very well, which we are experiencing almost every occasion in our life. Every time that we are meeting with people, objects, we know what is agitation very well, but we don't know what is meditation. But we can know at this stage that it is the opposite of agitation. Now, when we say agitation and meditation, where exactly these things are experienced? Does it experience at your body level, mind level, or intellectual level? And also, we know very well that the 6th chapter is the conclusion of the Tvam Pada of the Tattvamasi Mahavakyam. Traditionally, Bhagavad Gita has been understood to expound this Mahavakyam, Tattvamasi, and the Tat, Tvam, and Asi have been divided into six chapters each. And the Tat part will start from chapter 7, that is talking about that higher nature in much. And the Tvam part has been discussed in the chapters 1 to 6. And therefore, in the conclusion of the Tvam part, we must understand it is being talking about ourselves only. Tvam means me. You means what? Again, the basic concept of your 4 personalities must be kept in mind. Body, mind, intellect, and your spiritual, the higher nature, true nature of you, the real big I, versus the experiences happening through the body, mind, and intellect of the equipments, collectively put in as vasanas, forming the smaller I, which is the ego, the PFT in the BMI chart. So eradicating the PFT and using the BMI to cross over this vasana, pressure of vasanas, and ultimately realizing the true nature is possible only through the process of meditation. Mind and intellect are the equipments which we have to use to gain this experience of the higher, but the higher is transcending all these personalities, but we have to use these equipments, upadhis, to realize that higher. Now, the 630 in the chapter, somewhere, usually all chapters in Bhagavad Gita starts with question of Arjuna, but here Arjuna asked this question very late. In the 33rd shloka only, Arjuna actually starts asking a question. So the chapter starts directly as a continuation of chapter 5 by Bhagavan himself, explaining the technique of meditation. Who is a yogi? What aspects or parameters are required for him to become a yogi? But before that, in 6, I'm preferring to start this somewhere midway, where Arjuna is asking this question. Whatever you are saying, is it really achievable? This technique is what you are saying. So there, Arjuna is mentioning that he understands this nature of mind, which we don't understand. At least he is a mature student there. He is telling this chanchalam hi manam. We are talking about the mind, chanchalam, agitated mind. Pramati, balavad, dridham. It's very difficult to tame this mind. It is always agitated, not coming under the control. And he is also saying that it is a nigraham. To control this mind, nigraham manye, it is like controlling the wind, vayur aiva, and it is Sudushkaram. It is very, very difficult to control this particular mind. That is where, after listening to about 30 verses of the Bhagavad, of what Bhagavan is saying about meditation, at that point, in midpoint, he says that it is so difficult to control this mind. So the entire exercise is controlling, self-control, controlling the mind only is the main theme of discussions in all this entire, in the entire chapter. For which again Bhagavan says there, yes, it is without any doubt, without asamshayam, it is very true that it is very difficult to control the mind, but abhyasena cha vairagyena, we can, it is possible to control this mind through these two techniques of abhyasa and vairagya. He mentions there in the 35th. Countering Arjuna's claims that it is difficult. Yes, it is difficult, but it is possible. And then he also says that it is the difference between two types of minds. Vashyat manaha versus asamyat manaha. Vashyat manaha, the one which is under control. A mind which is under control is possible to gain that divine experience. And he also says in the same verse, in the 636 verse, he is saying that aptum, yes, you can gain it. Upayataha. Upayataha, meaning given there by Gurudev, is by proper means. It is possible by abhyasa, it is possible by vairagya, it is possible by vashyat manaha, by controlling the mind, by self-control alone it is possible. And actually, and he also says by aptum upayataha, which means by proper means that it is possible to gain. So one side yogi hridyana gamyam, yes, it is possible to gain. The other side, when Arjuna says it is difficult, God acknowledges, Bhagavan acknowledges it is difficult, but it is possible through these means. This comes in about 635, 636 as a midway summary of what has been discussed between shlokas number 1 to 30. Now getting back to the sequence. So how do you control the Vashyat Manaha is the main theme of discussions here in that. In the beginning, in the introduction session of the chapter 6, Gurudev very beautifully points out certain things. It's a graded lessons of spiritual unfoldment. Graded lessons meaning you are now reached the next level, chapter 6. So what has happened in these previous chapters, particularly chapter 3, 4, and 5, becomes a prerequisite, and success in that karma yoga, through which we gain what is called as sannyasa, becomes the prerequisite for the successful yogi to gain this experience of meditation. So, giving up reactions of the actions, karma phala, to give up the agency for reactions of actions is been discussed in our previous chapters of 4 and 5. And as we always used to say, this selfless activity leads to purgation of the vasanas, and thereby the ego, which comprises of these two components, one is the doership and the enjoyership, can be dissolved only by selfless action. And this doership and enjoyership is a quality owned by the mind and intellect. And therefore, when that is dropped, you become egoless, and the mind and intellect becomes purified without this sense of doership and enjoyership, but yet performing all the duties. Now, this is the essence of yet performing all the duties becomes the primemost factor, but without the sense of agency is the necessary quality of the mind and intellect, and therefore the formation of the PFT further is arrested, and whatever ego patches was there before has also been cleansed and purified in the process of doing selfless activity. Now, the very beginning of the chapter, the very first verse, goes on to emphasize this particular aspect only. Without this aspect, nobody can become a yogi or a sannyasi, is made very, very clear in the very first verse. Bhagavan says, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Anashrita karma phalam. Ashrita, to depend upon. Anashrita karma phalam, karyam karma karoti yaha. So the one who is performing his duties, but without the sense of agency and expectations for the fruits of actions, sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. Not the one who does not perform. Na cha akaryaha. And that too with Agni is being used here as a symbol of mentioning the performing the duties. The principle of Karma Yoga. So the point here is Anashrita Karma Phalam. If you have attained this state by purification of the mind and intellect, then you can qualify yourself to become a sannyasi and a yogi. And only at that situation can you proceed to the meditative seat. Again, important next following this one, the he says in that the next set of shlokas, actually from 2, 3, and 4, talks about one important quality called sankalpa, sarva sankalpa sannyasa. Sannyasa, renunciation. What to renounce? Agency, ego to be renounced. Sarva sankalpa sannyasa, all selfish desires. One who gives up the desires arising out of selfishness must be totally given up. And the one who has not given up that asanyasat sankalpo yogi na bhavati, he cannot become a yogi. One who has not given up this sankalpa. So in this verse, from 2, 3, and 4, that word of sankalpa is to be a little bit examined, because Gurudev has given a beautiful explanation of what exactly is this sankalpa. Fanciful thinking about the future, the imaginations of the future is essentially called as sankalpa. You cannot essentially called as sankalpa, future imaginations. You set on a plan. By the time you set on a plan, without any determination, without any persuasion, the moment you start executing the plan, the new plan comes up. There is no continuity, there is no persuasion, there is no concentration on the existing act. There is no concentration of the mind on one single theme of persuasion. So meditation, actually Gurudev here defines that it is the putting the mind, engaging the mind in a single theme of thought pointed at an altar, in exclusion of all dissimilar thoughts. So if you are having sankalpa, you cannot have meditation. Because sankalpa is the opposite here, again causing agitation of mind because of its constant jumping from object to object. That is like this monkey jumping from branch to branch. Similarly, the mind jumps from object to object. By the time it looks at one, and then it starts grabbing the next without any fruitification of the present plan in hand. So there is no constant persuasion, and therefore sankalpa is to be totally given up. That is the message here in this. Up to the 4th shloka, the theme is the same. But here, 3 and 4, there is again very important transformation to be happening in the mind and intellect. Because here, yoga arudasya, this arudaha, the word has been used very extensively in the 3 and 4 in giving us, for us to know that we have to get on to the seat of yoga meditation. Arudaha means upon, sitting upon, riding over. So the mind, you should ride over the mind. That is what is the, and Gurudev gives here the example of a steed. Aruruksh. The word has been explained here by Gurudev, Aruruksh. Using this example of a steed, Aruruksha. Steed is an uncontrolled horse. We are also, our mind also is in the same way. Every sense object that it meets, the stimuli received from the OET outside through the sense organs, immediately rides, this horse gets mad, untamed by temptation. So there, every time we are Aruraksha only, Aruruksha. Because why we, Gurudev says that this is the stage where the rider of that horse, which is the jiva, we are neither sitting on that steed nor are on the ground. You are in the process of evolution. Very beautifully, that example has been, metaphor has been given by Gurudev and explained it to us, because your one leg is in the stirrup. When you ride on the horse, there is a saddle on which you sit, and on the both sides you have this stirrup. So you put your leg into the stirrup, but the horse, untamed horse, pushes you away. So you are hanging with onto the ground with one leg on the stirrup and one leg on the ground. Here you require what? Complete self-effort and control to again and again climb over the seat of the saddle and sit there firmly, and then finally bring that animal, which is the mind, under the control of your intellect, the reins, and then you become the rider of this horse. And then that horse will start serving you. So that is that arudaha. And then once you are yoga arudaha means one which is aligned, the body, mind, and intellect is now aligned to that supreme goal. And in practical terms, aligned to the, when the horse starts moving towards the destination, then there is progress. This is very beautiful, been explained here. And also in the verse 6.3 becomes a complete summary of the chapters 3, 4, and 5. Karma karanam uchyate yoga arudasya tas aiva sama karanam uchyate. So you have to use the karma yoga for you to ride over this horse. And once it is there, then it is only quiescence, only inaction at the mind and intellect level. That means not propelled by sankalpa, not propelled by selfish actions, selfish desires must not be coming out of the same equipment. And that is the yoga arudaha stage. You will be only worshipping him, and all actions will be dedicated to him. Now, very clearly, again, this has been emphasized, the self-effort part. Gurudev says that even in that daily calendar, very first thing, man can change his destiny. He can change his destiny. Man can change his destiny not by wishing for it, but by working for it. The very clear direction that you have to work only, self-effort only. Uddharet atmanam atmanam. That is the 5th and the 6th verse, emphasizing that the atmanam, you by yourself, do not that can have to engage your mind and intellect, directing it to the higher by self-effort and by alertness of the intellect, keeping away from the temptations of the Maya. You have to raise by yourself. Here we require the cooperation of the mind. Therefore, the mind can by itself become your friend or can become Rupuratmanaha, can become your enemy. That has been discussed in that 5th and 6th verse. And also it has been pointed out here that it's an internal enemy, all the more dangerous. Because if you have an external enemy, much more easier to conquer. But if the enemy is within, how much more efforts you have to put to identify that enemy, to negate that enemy, to substitute that enemy wisely. So that concept of introspection, negation, and substitution comes to play. Introspect daily, Gurudev says. So you have to identify all the negativities, all the temptations, and thereby we have to raise by ourselves only. All the other things, including in Gurudev commentary, Gurudev says that Gurus, scriptures, all religious practices, and all the injunctions of the religions can only be pointers and guides. The actual evolution can happen. Nobody can help anybody in their spiritual evolution. Beautifully he says that. And therefore it has to be only by yourself only. Then we moving on to by self-effort. Now that self-effort has been emphasized, then the actual method of practicing the dhyana comes into explanations in the subsequent shlokas at the body level. How at body level? Shlokas 10 to 13 are essentially talking about how you will sit, where you will sit, and also before that in 7 and 8 and 9, the shloka 7, 8 and 9 talks about personification of a yogi, equanimity of mind, samabuddhir, sitoshna, usual the pairs of opposites have been emphasized that he doesn't get affected by Sitoshna, Sukha Dukkha, Mana, Apimana at body, mind, and intellectual level, or by meeting the plurality of the world, the different types of people, Mitru, Chatru, really Bandhu, and indifferent people, Udashinavat. All these people are met in our daily interaction in this world of objects. None of these things bother this yogi. So the mind and intellect is not at all affected by the happenings of the samsara at the OET level. They are in constant engagement with the supreme nature or the higher nature and working for the loka sangraha. That is the nature of this yogi. Losta and akanksha. At the value level also same. At the mind level also same. Therefore, the highest exhibition of Viveka and Vairagya is seen in his every minute of living. So then comes this 10 to 13, which is how to sit, where to sit straight. Beautiful instructions have been given there. And the benefit of concentration has been explained very, how the strength of this mind dramatically improves when it is brought together and focused on the altar and slowly evolved with the intensity of the mind and intellect and its energy concentration becomes a very high level, very positive, well ventilated life, Gurudev says, and then you to raise to the at the body level adjustments are being done. Also, Gurudev gives the example of how the lens is used when the concentrated rays of the sun passing through the lens, how it can burn the paper. Similarly, the mind and intellect, when it is kind of, brought together with such intensity of energy flowing through your channels internally, then he uses the word here, well ventilated. I don't know, well ventilated through all the channels, the energy shall pass, and then you get the experience of the higher with the same mind and intellect only. Prashanta Manam. Intellectual level instructions are given in 14 and 15. Instructions of that the intellect and the prerequisites of the Mana samyamya, again a reminder of the virtues of the intellect and the control of the mind is given in the shloka number 14. And in shloka number 15, a result of meditating, how he gains the nirvanam param, mat samastha adhigachati, how he becomes one with that supreme nature, one with me. Their direct revelation of Krishna says he becomes one with me. By doing in this meditation, the final culmination is the realization of the truth. Then further instructions. These are all because nowhere else in the any scripture has so much detail been given for the technique of meditation, Gurudev says. So therefore, these are all additional instructions in that from the 16th and 17th, telling us the ahar, vihar, vichar, what extent it should be, what exactly, no excesses on either side of the body, demands of the body, mind, and intellect have to be catered to, but it shouldn't become excess, it shouldn't become lesser. So, ashanaha, swapnashilasya, and jagrato, meaning not too much of sleep, not too much of wakefulness, not too much of eating. So the golden rule of moderation. This is a very important shloka for sadhaks like us, for people who are evolving. We should always try. The first step, you cannot become the higher. Gradual shanair. The same idea is explained in shloka number 25, that it is only slowly, hasten slowly. The book itself is there by Gurudev explaining all these aspects. But here the golden rule of moderation has been emphasized, where gradual progress only is possible. So we have to start not to exert too much in our work. We have to do work. We have to be selfless in our activities. Chestasya karmasu is a very important, again, we all are having aspirations to achieve, but we have to be careful in our level of exertion, because most energy will drain out there. And in our eating, in our thinking, in our sleep and wakefulness, there must be moderation. And also, this moderation will automatically lead to, in the 18th shloka, longingness, free from craving, free from the craving nature of the mind, is completely free from longing for excesses, will be given up through the practice of moderation. So we have to start. The technique of moderation has been explained very, very well. And most of the abhyasa is around this point only. Getting up 5 minutes, 10 minutes earlier to begin with, extending little bit more time for study, reducing one idli instead of 6, 5. I mean, everybody has a different capacity, but slowly giving up the demands of the body, mind, and intellect is the most important part of this meditative technique. And then the simile of the lamp has been given, like unshaken personality you can also become by this moderation. Then 20 to 22 is again, once gained this vision, yam labdhva chaparam. The once this direct experience is gained by pashyanti, by chitta nirudham. Again, it's by self-control and control of mind, self-control. Verse after verse, this aspect of self-control of the sense organs, control of the mind, chitta nirudham. Then you experience that pashyant atmani tushyati. You get complete satisfaction by the experience of that higher nature and infinite bliss. Atindriyam stays there. Once he gains this, he never loses it. There is no coming back out of it. he stays there for tattvataha. In that truth, established in the truth, he functions in the world outside. So up to the 20, from 20 to 22, this concept of what has been gained through the process of meditation has been explained very beautifully. And 23 is a very important verse, 623. A totally new dimension, a totally new definition of yoga has been given there. And Gurudev says that since many intelligent students of the Gita have not used this definition, unfortunately, it has not become as popular as it should have become. This particular definition of, because most definitions of yoga, we take it from the second chapter. Dukkha samyogam viyogam is yoga. Dukkha samyogam viyogam. And of course, the translation of this is, we all know that dukkha samyogam, to be firmly established in dukkha, not to be firmly established in dukkha, or not to be firmly aligned with the sorrowful nature of the mind, becomes the yoga. Gurudev, in his one of the again daily calendar quotes, this word is been a game changer for me, personally for me. Refuse to be unhappy. Spiritual circle can be pessimistic, and we must refuse to be unhappy. Such a strong statement. How can you be unhappy? Who are you? What is your true nature? What are you engaging with, the transient and finite Einsteinian world? Would you be worrying yourself on all this changing and fleeting happiness? Would you not be seeking the higher, the infinite? Where I have placed you in this mission, are you not in the study group? Are you not learning so many things that ought to be practiced? I ask these questions to myself. And then finally, I remember this: refuse to be unhappy, because nobody is spared from the onslaughts of life. Onslaughts and circumstances of this Maya shall go through the cycles of the ups and downs, which we know very well. And therefore, dukkha samyoga viyogam is to be remembered. Very beautiful verse here, because this very often is something which we experience. All the sukha, we can say that the parama sukham or sukham atya antikam is all beyond our experience at this moment. But dukkha samyogam is very well experienced by us, all of us. So to be away, viyogam, to be not aligned to the dukkha samyogam, is a technique by which you can refuse to be unhappy. Beautiful, isn't it? And 624, 25, all of this 26, restrain, talking only about restrained by buddhi. Use the buddhi for the self-control of the mind. Bring the mind under the influence of the intellect, which is under the influence of the value system prescribed by the scriptures. So using the value system, you have to, Shamadama has been again emphasized, Sankalpa Prabhavan Kaman. Again, the 624 emphasizes Sankalpa Prabhavam Kaman. Desires arising out of selfish desires. Thoughts arising out of selfish desires should be totally given up, because thought is the first place where the vasana manifests in the intellect, then converts itself into choices of achieving that selfish desire, and then ultimately translate itself into action in the body. So if you are arresting it at the sankalpa level, automatically everything else will come under the control, vashi of the mind. So this is about that. Up to 624, 25 and 26, again and again, Atma Samstam Manaha, Dhrithi, and Buddhi, controlled by the Buddhi, Sankalpa Prabhavam Kaman, and all this again, emphasis has been given, very, very many times. Yes. So then we, the 30th shloka infinite bliss is again the 27, 28, 29 talks about the omnipresence, universal vision is expressed there. 29,
Hari Om.
30. Yeah.
Balaji sir, your time is almost up now, so please.
So this 30 to 32 is talking about the ultimate, the culmination of meditation, which is gaining that universal vision. That is the most important result of getting this sarvam samam pashyati. And the one who is able to see the sarva samam pashyati becomes the uttama yogi. And then the theory of continuity of whatever you have gained now is not going waste. Even a little improvement continues to go there for lifetimes. Aneka janma samsiddho. That point is to be explained very clear. 40 from the 640 until almost the conclusion. There is a very beautiful summary of the theory of continuity. And finally, Tasmad Yogi Bhava Arjuna, because all other paths are only leading for you to become a yogi. Therefore, you must become a yogi. You must be a yogi, is what is a concluding part of the discourse given by Bhagavan Sri Krishna on this Dhyana Yoga. Sadguru Nath Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you.
Hari Om. Thank you, Balaji sir. Suresh ji, please.
Hari Om, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Manishji, one suggestion, you know that today almost 9 people should talk and there are a lot of newcomers are there and 24 participants are in the forum. And I don't mind that I can skip my slot because Nanduji is there, Meenakshi is there, lot of peoples are there, and so let them share views and you know that the next time, of course, not next
Hari Om,
week
I
when
think
we are talking the 7th chapter, I will spend 5 minutes or something. So otherwise, we will not reach anywhere. Time is already 8 o'clock. Okay,
it's okay. You can summarize in 3 to 5 minutes if you want. Otherwise,
it will be very difficult.
I know it
will
is
be very-
difficult. I agree.
Yeah,
Summarizing itself
give the chance to others. That is
Okay.
better. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Hari Om.
Meenakshi ji.
Yeah.
Hari Om. Hari Om. I'm audible, right? Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so chapter 6, very, very revolutionizing chapter, very practical chapter. So the way the chapter moves forward is the first 6 chapters that deal with the discipline of human individual, and mind is slowly raised to have knowledge of wider and wider perspective. So until the 6th chapter, we are into graduated disciplines of elevating ourselves. Now, I'll also summarize as fast as I can, because there's a lot to speak on this chapter. So the first 5 chapters, they explain the need of urgency in living a life of selfless dedication to the Lord and spending our time and energy in doing tireless efforts for the benefit of others. So the main concept within the first few verses is that do not shy away from work. And shying away from work is not to lead a spiritual life. Any work which is undertaken, every work has to be undertaken as an offering to the Creator. Keep that, let that be as the background in the mind. That all the work that we do, we offer it to the Lord and work tirelessly and endlessly. Okay, with this, what will happen is our day-to-day activities also get performed. It becomes a spiritual activity through the day. So Krishna is only telling Arjuna just to spiritualize his daily activities. He gives a lot of information, but the prime thing which I see in it is spiritualize your daily activities. So he comes with a paradigm shift that karma yoga is essential for both meditation and monasticism. Then if this is the case, then why insist on meditation? If karma yoga is so important, then why this whole big chapter on meditation? Then we have the definition of meditation. Meditation is the art of contemplating on a single theme with the entire mind to the exclusion of any distracting and dissimilar thought. So we regulate the mind's aimless wanderings and converge all the rays of mind to a single point of contemplation. This needs a special strength called concentration, without which the mind has no strength and efficiency. And what will happen with it is we will learn to focus. Meditation is not going to give us any knowledge of Brahman. It will help us focus. It will help us stay on with a particular thing. It will help us go deep into a particular thing. And any knowledge, this knowledge of Aham Brahmasmi, which is far away from us, it becomes a natural thing. It comes naturally. Okay, so what Krishna is saying is through selfless service. So the insistence has been again and again at our level, we need to keep that in mind. Through selfless service, we conquer enjoyership. So we work. With that, we have a wealth of concentration power which roars in our mind. And with this power of concentration, then you sit on meditation. Then again, I will talk a little more about mind concentration because I feel like our level, this is really important. What are the causes of the mental disturbances? So one is the attachments to sense objects and actions, our anxiety to worldly work, the fruits of action, and the sankalpa. So most of us have covered sankalpa, so I'll not touch on that. Gurudev has also mentioned in the art of man making that to sit with a wandering mind, dancing from object to object, is to drown in worldly joys and sorrows. And meditation is for those who have concentration in themselves. Then we have the very powerful verses which help us elevate the 6.5 verse and 6.6. Uddaret Atmana Atman. I personally absolutely like those verses. So the gist of the verse is that man should not look at someone else for help. Once you have taken a step towards something, do not be diffident. Once you have once you have set your foot on the plow, then you can't turn back. Once you've taken the work, you cannot turn back on it. Do not be diffident because of the mind's wool gathering habit, because mind will try to fool us. And once you have taken the step, then do not go back to the formal ways, because that might happen. We might fall back. So firmly hold on to new goals, refuse to slip back. So lift yourself by yourself. And also Krishna has particularly pointed out a very subtle thing, that our own ego is our friend. And as long as we recognize this subtle truth in our life, we should not have dependence on outer conditions, because our own unconquered intellect, it is our foe. So we don't have any friends and foes outside. It's just our own unconquered intellect, the lower intellect, which will not follow the intellectual discipline of the higher intellect. So what does this power of concentration do? It will fill us with new vitality, new strength, and a dash to achieve and rebuild. And such a person then becomes a master of his destiny. Then the next, it continues as what do we gain with this power of meditation? So there's a experience divine, which we have no experience about, but there's a divine experience comes in. Such a person is very firm as a mountain under all circumstances. He's established firmly in the experience divine. He lives without himself changing. So he is not tempted by the glittering world of objects. He discovers the source of bliss within himself. And self-realization is not a mere awakening to a higher plane of consciousness. You come down and you see the world, you work in the world, but you see the same consciousness everywhere. Then there are important conditions of the meditation. So one important factor, which Gurudev has mentioned in the art of man making again, is that fixing yourself at particular hours of the day is not meditation. First, you work on the heart. Heart is the mind intellect equipment. Unless and until that is purified, how many hours you sit there, nothing will happen. So first, focus on purifying your mind intellect equipments. Then there are a series of instructions. You sit alone, bring your mind and intellect, bring your entire energy, subdue all your energy, subdue all your activities through your senses, bring everything together. Let the whole energy be in the mind. So we do have series of instructions like sit erect, so that the prana moves And do not look here and there. Look at the nose as in let the objects, let our energy not go and look at the objects outside. So let everything be subdued and we focus only on having a focus on mind. So some sentences which I will read out if I have time. 1 second. So there must be a state of balance. We being alone to oneself and united in mind, intellect, and spirit. And eyes are not open entirely as objects outside may disturb us. Not look here and there. Completely restrain sense organs from disturbing the energy of the body and the mind. These are the general instructions which are being given. And why should we do all of these things? Because a divine peace, it wells from the bosom. And so then what are the signs of a successful meditation? How do we know that we are going the right path? This happens when we know that the mind is no longer wandering into the sense fields. So the simile given, as Balaji said, that the simile is that of the tip of the candle. So the mind of the meditator, it is leaping to meet the nature of the self in contemplation. Hence, his mind is steady like the flame of the mind. Then the discussion is on the goal and the vision of life. So what happens? There's an infinite bliss, which is comprehended only by the pure intellect. This bliss is only comprehended by pure intellect and not by sense organs. Why not by sense organs? Because so Gurudev has mentioned here that we live in an extrovert world to gain satisfaction, and our sense organs, they will move around the sense objects. Mind seeks, intellect is always restless. So as the meditator grows in inner poise and balance, he comes to a state where he gains an experience which satisfies all the 3 levels of his personality. And hence the mind doesn't go out in the usual fields of gratification. Then what happens? He is not shaken by the greatest sorrows in the world. He can ignore and laugh at all worldly pains and tragedies as though they're all happening for his entertainment, away from him, around him, all in him, but not of him. And this state of yoga is a divorce from contact with pain. And it has to be practiced with perseverance. Okay. Then we have the instructions for the slow students, a person who is slow in learning. So then Krishna has mentioned that mechanically, there has to be mechanical adjustments of body, mind, intellect. So 2 things, basically. Okay, Hari Om, Manish. Thank you.
You can just finish this piece, no? What you started.
Okay.
The people who are slow in intellect.
Yeah. So I will want to talk about I'll summarize it very fast. Then sure. 2 adjustments have to be given. 2 adjustments are being told for the slow students. One is subdue the faculty of imaginations and control all the senses from roaming in the sense object. Then it talks about set intellect in patience. This has to be done patiently. Let him reach quietude in degrees. Shanai Shanai. Let it happen in patience, because the inner quietude will come by degrees. It comes with its own rhythm and not by itself. Then Arjuna has asked a very potent question. What will one do? Because mind is powerful. How can I control the mind? He has given that 2 verses which have been given. And then Krishna acknowledges that, saying that, yes, what you're saying is right. Krishna also calls him Mahabahu, that you are a great conqueror. How can you be afraid of a subjective enemy? And then there are 2 important answers to be given, very, very practical. One is Abhyasa and Vairagya. What is Abhyasa? Abhyasa is constant practice. For example, we have to get up. We all know we need to get up in the morning. Body doesn't want to get up. Body doesn't understand that. Body has the sense organs have their own inertia. They will not listen. How will you make them listen? Intellect wants to get up. The body doesn't want to get up. We put it on practice every single day. Keep on practicing it. One day the lower mind will listen. The body will listen. That's Abhyasa. What is Vairagya? Vairagya has not been spoken about much, so I'll just cover briefly upon it. Vairagya it's an internal attitude wherein you have to be monk-like. We don't give up on anything. It's an internal attitude. When we work for our happiness, it leaves us with no happiness. So what gives us happiness? Karma yoga gives us happiness. Bhakti yoga gives us happiness. Jnana yoga gives us happiness. And why don't objects give us happiness? Because they are any happiness that comes from them is ephemeral. Pleasures go away very fast, but we persist and we are left with nothing. It leaves us empty. They give addictions. Another reason why we don't find happiness with objects is because they bind us. The more we hold tightly onto them, the more they are bound. And the more we are caught in their lives, they drag us into their lives. So we are demanding a lot from objects and they don't have the capacity to give to us. Hence, so if we understand this concept, even if it's at the background, then it's helpful. So dispassion doesn't come, it has to be developed. The first is abhyasa. We train ourselves and then it's dispassion. Then again, Krishna says that meditation is difficult for one who has an uncontrolled ego. So most important aspect, control your sense organs. And then we have a powerful definition of Shraddha. Shraddha is faith built upon understanding. It's a belief rooted in full intellectual application. And it implies a resolute, one-pointed and courageous act of will. And then we have the very powerful statement of Krishna, very optimistic statement. In the end, that when Arjun asks what happens if a person is not able to, gives up on meditation, or death comes on his way, or he falls back from his journey. So Krishna gives one of the most powerful and optimistic statement, and it's it has a force of commandment, which will forgive our entire past, saying that if we choose to live a life of goodness, the texture and quality of our future will be determined by the nature of the residual vasanas in him at that time. And regular and sincere meditation slowly revolutionizes the depths in us. Subtle effects are permanent. So what actually takes birth is not the body, but it is the mind which takes the birth. And the body will be discarded, but the force that is generated by our concentration, it will move forward. That's it, Hari Om. So all yoga is mental effort. Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you. We move to Umesh ji.
Yeah, Hari Om. I think we have, so Maniji, you were supposed to go first. So you've changed the sequence, is it?
Actually, what happened, no, most of the portions, I would say actually strongly recommend, so since you take it up, which you brought this point, most of it is the Art of Man Making is a very complete book. In fact, I think everything is so detailed and analyzed so well. Means, of course, I'm not comparing them with the Gita commentaries, which Gurudev have given, which is very more specific to the commentary and the shlokas. But this is a more analytical book. And in this, if you read this chapter, Help Yourself, about the mind being under your control, this was the main theme I wanted to also elaborate upon. But it has been very nicely covered by, I think, Balaji as well as by Meenakshi. So I will just move on to you, Umesh, please.
Sure. Yeah. Hari Om. So obviously, a lot has been said, and I also wanted to say a lot of, obviously we have less time. I would give a slightly different perspective from my personal life, from my professional corporate world. So we have been actually going through this experiential learning. I think I had mentioned this in few sessions earlier as well. And last 2 days, we have been going through this particular exercise of leadership behaviors and how people have to actually behave in a corporate environment and to become a leader, managing people and stuff like that. So last 2 days, we spent, sharing our experiences. And the whole course is actually something called as my self-awareness journey. Okay. So many things that I could actually relate, whatever we are going through in this particular chapter with what we actually practice and wanted people to actually, practice. One of the things was, being authentic, no masks, know your true self, do not pretend, and you really find out what are the things that you are not doing, what are the things that you need to do. And as Balaji said that, nobody can teach you how to be a good person or become a good leader. It is within you. Everything has to come within you. And that is the self-awareness that everybody is, wanting our juniors, our people, people around us to actually learn. And it is also about practice. So we are saying that these are our experiences. We are not perfect, but this is what we are asking you to do step by step. Small baby steps to take, practice, and then become a good leader. And there is no end to it. You cannot have a perfect leader or a perfect person in this world. That is something that we have, we have been talking about. So I was just trying to relate what is happening in my corporate, professional life, and what is happening in our study group here. One of the other things that I also I was going through various quotes from Gurudev. He says, "Let a man lift himself by his own self alone. Let him not lower himself, for his self alone is the friend of oneself, and this alone is the enemy of oneself." So, a very powerful statement. It is the self, or the we alone can elevate ourselves. Nobody else can help us, and unless we have that vigor and that particular focus, it's not going to be possible. Another quote that I really liked was, "Without spiritual stamina, no one can stand up to the threats and onslaughts of circumstances in life." So I think this also was mentioned by Balaji Maharaj in terms of circumstances which are, there is going to be onslaught, how not to be unhappy. So I think a very powerful statement. I think something which one can really remember and talk about to others as well. Of course, then we talked about the methods of meditation, how we have to keep a steady mind, and the most important takeaway for me was how yoga is hard to be attained by uncontrolled self, restless mind, and agitation caused by sense organs. So the agitations which are caused because we are engaging in this life, we have duties to perform, but at the same time we get accustomed of certain behaviors, get attached to certain objects, get attached to certain things in life, and that really creates agitation, which is not going to help us to control the restless mind. So something that we really need to be aware of. Then the definition of Shraddha, as I mentioned earlier, Shraddha is the right, so Shraddha is not blind faith. And the very nice definition which has been given by Gurudev is, Shraddha is the right intellectual apprehension of the deeper imports and the full significance of what the teachers teach and the scriptures declare. Very, very powerful. This was one of the highlights of at least what I understood, because Shraddha many times is taken in a negative manner. It is said that it is a blind faith. You don't have to question. You have to just believe on what your guru says, or something that the scriptures say. But this actually changes the paradigm, in terms of what Shraddha is really meaning. The other piece that it really appealed me was the optimism of the whole philosophy. And I think the Gurudev has so nicely said that this is an opinion. So one is the optimism, and another aspect is the opinion of Lord Krishna. So the optimism says that even if you fall from yoga, whatever things that you are doing, whatever little things that you have done in the past life is going to help you. And he has given those examples, and we also discussed that some of the great souls which actually have accumulated so much of good karma, so much of probably their journey is actually probably at the end, they when they get born, they just do a revision of whatever they have learned earlier, and they then they start, practicing, exercising, talking about these things so early in their life. And why does it happen? Obviously, because they have done something good in their previous life. So it really reinforces the incarnation theory, and then we can really see for ourselves how this can be true. Yeah. So that was about the optimism. Then the other thing about the opinion. So Lord Krishna says that this is my opinion. So this is not a commandment. This is not a rigid prescription nor a philosophy to be blindly followed without questioning. And this really is this is so different than other religions that we can see, that when we see ekam sat bahuda vipravadanti, there is only one truth said by different people by different ways, and this is another opinion that Lord Krishna is talking about. So it is so powerful, and it really gives us hope. First of all, that we are examining things. These are not thrust upon us. It is up to us to take it. It is up to us to elevate ourselves, exalt ourselves, and it is so optimistic in terms of whatever you do is going to really give you some good results in the end. And finally, I would say that I would like to quote this particular stanza. It's slightly long, but it is so powerful, and we have talked about it. I think this is in the 45th verse. To be one who has got the to one who has got the temperament to seek life, the anxiety to realize the perfection, the vigilance to understand the hollowness of the sense life, the daring to follow the narrow footprints of the seers of the world, the appetite for infinite peace and tranquility, the courage to lead the moral and ethical values, the bravery to barter one's all to achieve the higher. Such an one is not a mineral man, not a vegetable specimen, not a member of the cattle world, but he is the noblest creature under the sun, standing right in front of the doors of truth, demanding his admission into the sanctum sanctorum. So basically, it is telling us that we as humans, this particular life that we have got, probably the evolution has taken us to this particular stage where it is not the starting point. Probably it is the evolution which has taken us, and this particular janma or this particular life itself can give you moksha if you do meditation. So it says right now in this life is our last birth. If you have a taste to meditate, an urge to seek, a daring to live the life divine. So I will end with that. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you, Meshi. Sharma ji, sorry, Nandu ji, please. You have 3 to 5 minutes.
Hari Om. Very nicely explained in last week as well as this week by all the speakers. We are studying about the Atma Sayama Yoga. And as Dr. Sanjay ji also mentioned about like Sayama, which is about like a Dharana Dhyan Samadhi, which we have learned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And then Sayama is on what like Atman, and that is what we are learning. And that is already mentioned in different way, which is about like Dhyana Yoga. So the initial like 9 shlokas of this chapter 6, you can see those are like summarizing chapters from 2 to 5, which is about like a karma yoga. And when we talk about like karma yoga, it is specifically it's talking about like a nishkam karma yoga. Nishkam word is like very important. On the 3rd shloka of this chapter, and Dhaneshwar Maharaj, when defining on the yogi, what he says is like about Jeta Pudil Paisa Paruke, Magilas Maravete Take, Aisia Sarsi Bhumike, Samadhi Rai. What does that mean? Jeta Pudi means always what we think is about future or maybe past, but we don't live maybe in the Vartmana. And that is how J. Krishnamurti he's mentioning about like living moment to moment. And that is very much important. And as Umesh mentioned about like a corporate world, there was one thing was coming up, which is about like talking about like mindfulness and all that thing. So I have attended that one session, and they were trying to ask you focus maybe on your feet. I mean, just your mind should not go anywhere, but it should be just remain with you, maybe with your feet. And we'll see like all our scriptures and everything. What we talk about is keep that maybe in your heart or maybe in the bhumadhya. And that's how we need to concentrate. Just moving on the like shloka, which is fifth shloka, which Uddare Atmana Atman, and there is in Marathi very nice verse is there like तूच आहेस तुझ्या जीवनाचा शिल्पकार, means you are the only one who is building your life, no one else. There is like a guru and everything, they will tell you how to do and everything, but ultimately that sadhana and everything we need to do ourselves. Then moving on the chapter and the shloka from like almost like 10 to 32, which is talking about like about dhyana yoga, how we should sit, what is the posture and everything. And there is Upanishad which is called Shvetashvatar Upanishad, and Shvetashvatar Upanishad, second chapter of this Upanishad, is purely about like the dhyana yoga. And many of these shlokas, it is identical to the dhyana yoga chapter, how to sit, how to how we should have like our asanas and everything. So for me, it looks like the first 9 shlokas, which is about like karma yoga, it looks like for like yama niyama as per the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Then the posture related things, which is like asana. And there is one sutra in the Brahma Sutra also, like asana sambhavat. Asana sambhavat means all these upasanas should be done by sitting only. Maybe you cannot do upasana maybe just by walking here and there, but we have to concentrate. That's why we need to sit at one place. Like Prathama Sahaja Avastha, Madhyama Dhyana Dharana, Tritiya Pratima Puja, and Tirtha Yatra Adamata. Maybe state will come that it will be like a Sahaja Avastha when you will feel like samadhi at each and every time, but that we may not be at that stage. Then moving on the shloka 17, which is talking about yukta ahara viharasya, and I feel it's personally it's like it's talking about like pratyahara, what is mentioned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And the important point I would like to conclude with the abhyasa and vairagya. Meenakshi ji also mentioned about this one. And in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also it is mentioned that abhyasa vairagyam tanna virodha. So they are controlled by practice and non-attachment. So what is that? It's about the chitta vritti. And the second shloka, first chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we know that yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So that is possible by abhyasa and vairagya. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you, Nanduji. Sharma ji.
Hari Om.
Sharma ji,
Am I visible? Or am I audible?
you are neither visible, now you are audible. Now you are visible also. Okay.
Became mistake. Hari Om, Hari Om. You know, I mean, if you see the mountain tops of Himalayas, there are different shikhara there. So like this is probably coming like we had karma yoga, then sannyas yoga, and then karma sannyas yoga, and now we come to the atma yoga. So the other shikhar, which we are going to see now. Now, you know, when Arjuna has been asked, I mean, he's trying to run away from it. Bhagavan gives him through this slok, he's telling him, but what needs to be done? You know, what is the actual fact which is available to you right now, and why you're trying to run away from it? So there, Bhagavan has explained very, very nicely. But see, unfortunately, I mean, in my situation, I'm going through a certain crisis right now. I'm not able to handle myself. Whereas, you know, all the answers are given here. The problem is, you know, working over them is the difficult task. Saying something is something different. But whereas actually when you go through it and you, like see, Arjun could go through that and he could come out of it. So when I personally am still going through it, I have not come out of it. If I speak something, it is purely on my knowing the level, which doesn't serve the purpose, you know. So I was thinking that, you know, itna बोलना है, then I said, damn it, जो बोलने की बात कर रहा हूँ, उसमें आधा तो मैं खुद पे apply भी नहीं कर पा रहा इस समय यार. So there's no logic in saying that, you know. But again, coming back to it, whatever has, you know, I mean, what has touched my heart and which I would really like to work upon in the coming days, including today itself, you know, I mean, starting from quite some time back, is like the sixth shlok, you know, Udvare Atmanam. You know, this fifth and the sixth slok, if you see, are very, very important words. In fact, the famous book which I spoke earlier also, Evolve Your Brain by Dr. Joe Dispenza, even he has mentioned about this slok in one of the chapters. You know, he mentioned in the beginning, the Holy Scripture, Bhagavad Gita says this, and then he explains it. So there again, because that was on evolving your mind, your brain, you know, through yourself. He's not giving any outside instruction. There's no medicine given, nothing like that. Just purely through your own self. So there it has been given, and here when the Atma now word is there, Atma doesn't mean, I mean, from the Atma word, we will take the man part of it. Because here, if you see later on, Arjuna is asking Chanchala hi mana Krishna. He's not saying Atma is Chanchal. He says mana is Chanchal. So this is the most important one, because once we have conquered this portion of it, you know, I mean, it is with us. Only then we can become yoga root or, you know, yoga yukt. And then another thing, you know, what are the qualities, or how do you begin it? There's sankalpa varjitaha. The same sankalpa varjita comes in fourth adhyaya also. So once you give up that, then you only become a sannyasi. Now, karma sannyas and karma yoga, they are two different things that have been explained by Bhagwan in the earlier chapter. Now, coming back here, Bhagwan confirms that yes, man is not very easy to control. I mean, same thing, he has given a very good slok in Mahabharata, when, you know, Yudhishthira used to go through different quite often. Arjuna had only once. Yudhishthira was a person, he would have, you know, time and again go into that thing when his man will trouble him, kaisa hoga. So in one of these situations when they had to do the yagna, and whatever money they had was through the war, which was not the right money to be used for the yagna. So he gets into repression kind of thing. So there Bhagwan says very good, you know, dvido jayate vyadhihi manaso sharirastata parasparam terojharnam nirdvamdam na uplebhate. He says there are only two kinds of sicknesses, which I think any doctor in the world can certify. Only two sicknesses, one is mansik, mental, and second is physical. But parasparam sanyog, when both of them support each other, only then they can effect you, otherwise they cannot. So there comes the next answer. You know, abhyasena, the practice has to be there, that, you know, they do not get into the paraspar sanyog, which can lead to a physical discomfort or a problem into a mental one, depression, whatever. If it is physical problem, then again mentally one has to be strong. If it is mental problem, physically one has to be strong. So this is very important. And then coming back, you know, Bhagwan has sorted out one of our problems कि यार अगर ये करते करते सीखते सीखते अगर हमारा निर्वाण नहीं हुआ, हमको अगर मान लो मोक्ष नहीं हुआ, तो क्या हुआ? अगर that पुनरभि जन्म वो आएगा ठीक है, but do we start from A? You know, from LKG onwards. So there is sorted one at least issue out. कि नहीं ठीक है, you don't start from A, you start from where you left. So at least that one solace is there. Now coming to the solace part of it, should we stuck on the solace, or should we go for it like what Bhuvan said? You know, you can do it in this birth itself. So there, the thing needs to be seen how one can go on doing it oneself. So I personally, you know, like I said, I shared my personal thoughts. Since I'm unable to cross that bridge right now, there's no point speaking much. Though I could have, but then that is just the knowledge level, so not worth it. Hari Om.
Hariom, thank you, Sharma ji. We move on to Dr. Sanjay ji for the final concluding session on this chapter.
Hari Om. In the continuation of the Adhyaya, the way Antakarna Vritti can be subdued has a Sthula Swarupa and a Sukshma Swarupa. The Sthula Swarupa is objectification of a subject. Any external independent thing creating a flutter on the pristine purity of the chitta leads to objectified vritti. The adhyaya that we are studying is about an advanced yogi who has already conquered the chitta shuddhi aspect of the sadhana. So nothing external in the form of jada or the object or the vastu would dare to intervene in his act of concentration. If by any chance, for any reason, one is able to withdraw himself from the objects outside, would that mean that when he is not in connection with the indriya gochara things, things that are sensed through the sense objects or the sense indriyas? In other words, if all the indriya gochara things have stopped giving the reactions to the mind, there is a complete cutoff from the external world because of the closure of the sense organs. In that case, the antakarana is free to have its play with its inner, invisible, yet very powerful samskara rupi smritis, which are aroused by the mind even without the absence of an actual object in front of him. This, according to Nyaya Shastra, is called ayathartha prama. This is not prama, this is aprama. Knowledge gained in absence of any object in front of you, which normally means smruti udbhava jnana, that which arises from smruti. So when the yogi, after the chitta shuddhi, decides to dedicate his mind for the sake of contemplation, then he is faced with the internal enemies, the enemies that are arising from the memory, samskara rupa, and that is too difficult a thing to resist. So the one who has even conquered the internal aspect is being described here in the 19th shloka when the Bhagavan says, Yatha deepaha nivatasya na ingate. Ingate is to flicker. Nivatasya, absence of wind. In the absence of wind, the way the flame will not flicker, in the similar manner, tadvat yoginaha yunjate. Yogi's antakarana vritti does not flicker even by the internal arousal of sensory implications in absence of even the object in front. So smruti rupa samskara rupa vyuthana, as it is called in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there is no diversion of thoughts even when he has already cut off from the sense organs. In such a case, because there are subtle samskaras, the analogy used by Bhagavad Gita is of vata, that is wind. Wind is invisible, yet has a power to extinguish a flame. Similarly, the hidden samskaras, even though they are not present in the obvious form, in the form of an object, a sensuous thought about a woman can generate in the mind even in absence of a woman. The impression or the samskar of the previous interaction arisen out of that which has aroused because of the previous interaction through the perception has led to the subsequent arousal in the mind even when the object is not in front. So such a yogi, niruddha chitta uparamate, his antakarana has crossed the boundary of ekagrata. The vikshepa is the multitudinal aspect of the mind, focusing on multiple things and flitting from one place to another place. One is called asthiti, another is called chanchalya. Not able to concentrate on one place and always flitting from one object to the other object. That is the classical characteristic of the mind or the antakarana of a person who is laden with rajoguna and tamoguna. The one who has developed this sattva guna shall have the ability to concentrate or do ekagrata, and an ekagrata done over a considerable period of time then leads to what is called as a chitta niruddhata, which is described as niruddha chitta uparamate by yoga sevaya. Sevaya is practice. By repetitive practice of yoga, the yogi then enters into a state where Atmana Atmanam Pashyan Atmani Tushyati. He, seeing self by self, satisfied in self. The dual aspect or the duality of the observer and the observed, since it gets dissolved, the observation is no more there. Similarly, the yogi who was practicing as sadhaka for the sadhya through the sadhana has merged all into one. So there is no sadhaka entity anymore. Sadhya is already merged in sadhaka, so the sadhana is lost. Such a yogi then, seeing the self by the self, this is called the Satchit aspect. Knowing the existence, but not through the knowledge, which is called choiceless awareness by Krishnamurti. Buddhigrayam atindriyam atyantika sukham vetti. What he gets atyantika sukham. Atyantika means every happiness in the world is sublated by another happiness. This is called atishaya or sa atishaya sukha. Sa atishaya sukham. A person with two-wheeler gets more satisfied by a four-wheeler. A person with a plane gets more satisfied than a four-wheeler. There is always a comparative analogy possible, and there is always some sukham superseding the previous sukham. This is called sa atishaya or satishaya sukham. When thus far no further bliss is obtained, which is called niratishaya sukham or atyantika sukham, this is what the yogi gets by buddhi grahyam atindriyam. Two aspects are important. One, there is a flickering moment, a transient moment in the intense pinnacle of sadhana when the yogi does feel that he is at the height of the bliss. And the feeling that he is at the height of the bliss remains only for a fraction of a second, because then he becomes the bliss. When you are becoming the bliss, then there is no way you can know the bliss, because you are the bliss. And that is what buddhi graham is during the phase when buddhi is still in the finest possible vritti called sukshma antakarana vritti. The buddhi is able to grapple or grasp the bliss, and immediately after that, without even realizing, yogi passes into the final frontier where he is not aware. As one Sufi says, हम वहां है जहां से हमको खुद हमारी खबर नहीं आती. And in all means, thus such a sukha has to be atindriya. It cannot be through senses. The five senses are completely helpless to reach that, because sendriya sukha, sukham through the sense organs, is always limited. This being atindriya, that is the reason why in sadhana, whatever is through indriya is to be shunned away, which is called vairagyam. And that is the reason why the next shloka says, Yam labdva na adhikam na aparam labham. There is nothing left beyond this. Yasmin sthito, the one who is established in this particular phase, gurunam api dukkhanam na vichalyayet. The largest or the highest of the sorrow cannot even make any difference to such a person. A death warrant issued by the ruler of Delhi against Saint Kabir, everyone in Banaras was afraid that the king will come, the Sultan will take away Kabir and execute him. So everybody was worried, unhappy, except Kabir, because he said, it is the body that he will punish. I have nothing to do with it. Tam Vidyat, if one has achieved this kind of knowledge, then Tam Vidyat, let it be known, Dukkha Sukha Viyoga Yoga Sadnitam. The definition given of yoga in Patanjali Yoga Sutra in the second sutra is Atha Yogano Shasanam. It is the first shloka. The second one says Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Bhagavad Gita redefines the same as yoga definition by word Dukkha Sanyoga Viyoga Yoga Saudnitam. That it is an antithesis in English. That which dissolves the association of the dukkha. The tendency to get associated with the dukkham when it is dissolved, that is what is yogam. Sanischayena yoktavyo yoga anirvin chetasa. Steady and undespairing mind. Sankalpa prabhavan kaman sarvan asheshataha tyaktva indriya gramam samantataha manasa viniyamya. Controlling the senses. Who controls the senses? The mind. Then controlling the mind. Who controls the mind? The intelligence. Buddhi krutva manasa niyata. Manasa krutva indriya niyata. This is the manner in which the yogi then, till the time the mind is existing, it has to be employed, because there is no way possible to annihilate the mind unless one has decided to dedicate it to one point, to the extent that the usage of mind becomes completely hopeless and useless, which in Shastriya Paribhasha can be called as the suicide of the mind. And this is not going to happen overnight. So shanaihi, slowly, slowly, dhire, dhire, dhire re mana, dhire sab kuch hoy, mali aave 100 ghada, ritu aaye fal ho. Mali siiche 100 ghada. Even if you give hundreds of buckets of water, the flowering is going to come only in the season. तुका म्हणे तेते नाही चालत तातडी प्राप्त काळ घडी आल्याविन. Nothing is possible unless one has reached to the opportunate moment. How do you reach? Shanaihi shanaihi uparamet buddhya dhruti grahitaya. Arjuna, the only organ that you are endowed which is of some use in this world is your buddhi, nothing else. Everything else in your body is an implement. They're all executors. The one who actually propels the executors is the buddhi. Atma samstham manah krutva na kinchit api chintayet. Na kinchit api chintayet. Do not think of anything else other than what I have told you, which is your sadhya, which is your ishta devata. Concentrate to an extent where you will not be aware of anything else existing when you are concentrating. That itself is called concentration. Ekam agre asit iti ekagrata. There cannot be second. As a Sufi says, na hazar hai, na khatar hai, na raza hai, na dua hai, na khayale bandagi hai, na tamannae khudai. That is the state where nothing is existing except the existence. Yataha yataha chanchalam asthiram manah nischarati tataha tataha niyamya atmani eva vasham nayet. To the extent the Vagaries of mind. The wavering mind is controlled with nishchayaha, which is Buddhi's function. To that extent, tataha niyamya atmani eva vasham nayat. Nayat is to propel. Nav, navika, the word has come from naya. Naya is to propel. To the extent the attempt has been made to control the senses from by the mind, intellect, to that extent you will be propelled towards the ultimate goal. Yoginam uttamam sukham hi prashanta manasah. The happiness which is the only goal for which every single jiva in the jiva srushti is striving for. That goal of happiness is nothing else but the presence of undisturbed, pristine and pure calm or the peace of the mind that you get. Prashanta manasaha, complete subduing of the waves that are arising in the form of thoughts on the substratum, which is called as antakarana, leading to the complete absence of any rajogunatmaka or tamogunatmaka activity in the mind, is called prashanta manasa, and that mind which is at peace is the happy mind. Peace is the other side of the coin, where one side is represented by the happiness. Shanta rajasam upayeti akalmasha brahma bhutam. That is the inching towards the Brahma pada. Sada atmanam yunjanam vigata kalmasha yogi sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukham ashnute. He reaches to the height of the bliss, such a yogi, by sada atmanam yunjanam, by constantly being in the involvement through the concentration of the self or the atman. Sukhena brahmasvarsha. Sukhena, sukha means easily. The Sanskrit definition of sukham is not happiness. Sukham is anything that is easy, anything that comes as sukha asanam, sukhasanam. Sukhasana means most comfortable, easy, without any pain. So that easily the Brahma Samsparsha, the glimpse of the Brahman is fathomed by him. The glimpse, the word is used because Brahman cannot be touched upon. It is beyond the senses. That which is beyond the senses can only be experienced. Again, this experience is not through the not same as the objective experience. So that is why it is not anubhava, it is anubhuti. Anubhava and anubhuti is different. If a question is asked to the sugar that how sweet you are, she will say, I don't know. Because sugar, by having sweetness as its own criteria, does not need to taste the sweetness. A sweetness cannot taste the sweetness. A thirst cannot quench the thirst, because thirst is thirst by itself. Similarly, the existence by existence itself need not prove its existence by anything else. Sarvabhutastha atmanam sarvabhutani atmani yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshana ikshate. Such a yogi who has reached to this ultimate stage then is able to see himself. First, he has seen himself as the Atman or the self. This is the one stage. As Yogi Aurobindo says, this is the penultimate stage. Knowing one's own true inner nature, getting acquainted with one's own reality residing right within, getting the taste of the nectar that is constantly flowing right within us, is the recognition of your own nature. But recognizing yourself and your own nature alone is not enough. Recognizing that the same nature is existing in all that is existing outside you, which is nothing else but the Surva Bhutastha Atmanam. Same, that is what is residing in me, is residing in others. And Sarva Bhutani Atmani. The same thing is said by Kabir Maharaj as Hum Sabi Ma सब हमी माँ, हम है बहुरी अकेला. I am into everybody, everybody is in me, yet I am alone. This intriguing statement is what is described in the 29th shloka. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasya aham na pranashyati sacha me na pranashyati. Neither he can remain as a bhakta, nor I can remain as a god, because bhakta is in God, God is in bhakta, bhakta and the God are inseparable. यह एकत्वम अस्थितः सर्वभूतस्थिनं मां भजते स योगी मयि वर्तते सर्वथा वर्तमानः अपि. Once this established condition is established, then Arjuna, whatever his vartamana may be, whatever may be his life, it has nothing to do, because he is now in the sthiti where there is no skhalana anymore. He is not chutam anymore. He becomes same as me, as achyuta, the one who is not skhalanashila. Atma upamyena sarvatram samam pashyati. Once this is told, Arjuna has his own doubts and he starts firing the final frontiers of doubts in meditation. Madhusudana, tvaya prokta yoga aham chanchalatvat na pashyami sthiram. I understand what you are saying, Bhagavan, but I am doubtful whether the state of having this complete withdrawal from outside activities of mind and focused on only one, can the state be maintained for a long time? I'm doubtful. The reason for it is manaha chanchalam Krishna pramathi balvat drudham. This mind is pramathi, turbulent always, strong, unyielding. Tasya nigraham aham manye vayu iva dushkaram. Can you control the wind which is blowing at the stormy speed? You cannot. Mind is something similar, Krishna. How do you expect me to control the mind? And then Bhagavan says, agreed, asamshaya. Agreed with you, Arjuna. Yes, mind is difficult to control, but not impossible, because those who have inculcated the virtues to tackle the impossible, having the mighty arms, they are called Mahabaho. Asamshaya Mahabaho, Manah Durnigraham Chalam. It is very difficult to control. However, Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha Gruhyate. The maximum takeaway of this particular adhyaya is this one shlok line. Abhyasena tu Kaunteya. Abhyasena. There are two directions in which the sadhaka has to stretch himself. One is to tyaja, abandon. One is to obtain and achieve. Vairagyam is vairagyena vishayastotra khilikriyate. That means vairagyena vishayastrota. All the vishayas are made weak and weak and weak by vairagya. So that is what is tyajate. That side which you are supposed to leave, vairagya helps. Side where we are supposed to move forward is called viveka. Vairagyena vishayastrotra khilikriyate. Viveka darshan abhyasena viveka strota udghatyayet. This we find in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra on first adhyaya, the sadhana pada, on the samadhi pada, 12th sutra. Abhyasan vairagya. So constant endeavor of avoiding that which is detrimental for my spiritual progress is done by the vairagya, and a constant endeavor to move towards the understanding of the self is viveka, which is done by abhyasa. Again Arjuna doubts. Shraddhaya upeto yoga chalita manasaha aprapya yoga samsiddhi kangati gacchati. In case Bhagavan, I try for all this and suddenly my death comes, what happens to me then? All my practice in this particular birth of mine, whatever I did, it is going to be completely washed. And am I going to restart again from the scratch? The answer given by Bhagavan is not at all so. As Gurudeva gives explanation, that if the subject is studied earlier in the previous birth, there can only be recapitulation or revision in the next birth. There is no need to start the subject right away. And that is why this is a great assurance given by Bhagavan. Na eva yah amutra vinashasyasta vidyate nahi kalyana krut kaschit durgati gacchati. anything that is done for the sake of realization will never go waste. Even if it is a compulsive presence in a satsang, even if it is a compulsive presence in a temple, even if it is compulsive meditation, even if it is compulsive repetition of God, nothing will go waste. It will yield the result. The extent of the result will depend upon what is being dedicated. That is why tatra tam buddhi sanyoga purva daihikam labate yatate cha tato bhuyaha. Arjuna, tatra tam buddhi sanyogam purva daihikam. Whatever you have done in your past births or past many births shall propel you forward in this birth to achieve or move towards that goal. Purvabhyasena riyate hi avashaha api jidnyasu api. And then the Bhagavan in the last shloka says, Tapasvibhyaha adhikaha yogi, Jnanibhyaha adhikaha yogi, Karmibhyaha adhikaha yogi, Tasmat yogi bhava arjunaha. First do karma for the sake of chitta shuddhi, then take paroksha jnana for the sake of shastra krupa, then do tapasa for the sake of austerity in the form of karchru, mahakarchru or chandrayana vrata or any vrata or fasting. But all this ultimately is to reach a stage called yogi. That is why Arjuna, do not stop being karma yogi, do not stop being tapasvi, do not stop being paroksha jnani. Become a yogi. Hari Om.
Hari Om. So, Kumarji, please close.
Yeah. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामय, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ओम शांति शांति शांतिः। हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम। Let us take our pledge. We stand as one family, bound to each other with the love and respect. We serve as an army, courageous and disciplined, ever ready to fight against all low tendencies and false values within and without us. We live honestly the noble life of sacrifice and service, producing more than what we consume and giving more than what we take. We seize the Lord's grace, keep us on the path of virtue, courage and wisdom. May Thy grace and blessings flow through us to the world around us. We believe that the service of our country is the service of the Lord of Lords, and devotion to the people is the devotion to the Supreme Sir. We know our responsibilities. Give us the ability and courage to fulfill them. Om Tat Sat. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Next week we have got full Gita chanting. Everybody is requested to nominate themselves in the WhatsApp group for chanting. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Okay.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.